All right, and we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Real Live Talk. This is episode number 67. Really appreciate you guys for taking the time to check out this episode, whether you're watching live or listening on one of the podcast platforms later on, or however it is that you're checking out this podcast. Really appreciate you guys for being here. I hope that this episode blesses you, encourages you, challenges you in some way. And if it does, if you'd consider subscribing, sharing, or leaving a review, really, really appreciate that. I'm stoked to have with me today as my guest Garrett Ielapi. And Garrett, man, thanks for being here. How are you today?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. It's great to finally connect. I feel like we've got like so many of the same connections and very
hmm
similar friends in common and stuff like that. Kind of
Yeah.
all centering around the Elim world, Elamites.
Yep. Yep.
Um, do they still call, like when I was there, that we called ourselves Elamites? Is that still a thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what my
That's
class.
just
That's what we call ourselves. So
yeah.
yeah.
When did you graduate from Elam?
I graduated in 2014.
Okay. Yeah, I was
hmm
back in '07.
Nice.
Getting so old, bro. It's crazy. It's so nuts. But if you would, man, just take a moment and just tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do,
Sure.
and all that good stuff. Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Yeah. So I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I was born and raised, and that is where when that's where I mean, that's where I came to know the Lord when I was 18 years old, and it was during that grow up stage, that teenage stage, that I got enrolled into martial arts, and that is when I just absolutely fell in love with movement and discipline and just physicality in general. And so that's kind of where um, my movement journey began. And I went through middle school, went through high school. Very rebellious teenager, very just partier, chasing not really chasing girls, actually getting chased from police. That was more of the thing I was into. And
Is
uh,
that how you learned parkour?
honestly, yeah, yeah, it's hilarious because it's so funny because like it was around. I mean, that was so you graduated ELIM '07. I graduated high school
Yeah.
in 2010, and so it was around that time that parkour free running started hitting YouTube. And as soon as I started seeing these videos, man, I just fell in love with it. All I knew is like I need to do this stuff, and I would practice after school like by myself on playgrounds and just get good at the basics and stuff. But we would, yeah, on weekends we would be running from cops, and I would have it to be like jumping over fences and bushes, and I would be simply just using the movements I was teaching myself, and it was fun to use it in, I guess, a real situation. Um, but yeah, it was until it was the summer after I graduated high school that my life had just kind of hit, like all of that stuff kind of just culminated into this one moment of, I am sick of living this way. It is bringing me down. It brought me to a very dark place. And yeah, I gave my life to the Lord in September of 2010. And I was very influenced by, I actually had a really good relationship with my youth pastor at the time, regardless of all the stuff I was doing. I confided a lot in him. And obviously, looking back, I was definitely attracted to not only him, but the Jesus in him and the Holy Spirit
Mm,
that
yeah.
was leading me. And he was the first person I contacted. I was like, hey, like it was a pretty crazy experience. I remember I was in my bedroom and I was at, the girlfriend I had at the time. We had broken up. I was, recovering from a bunch of parties I was at to previously, and I was just in a very dark place. And there was like a prominent stirring. It wasn't an audible voice, but there was something that told me, encouraged me to walk to the beach. I live like my parents' house was it was about 30-minute walk from Lake Erie, and so I did. I mean, this feeling would not go away as much as I tried to ignore it, and I walked to Lake Erie. I just walked to the shore. I sat down on these steps that led down to the sand, and it was like the most peaceful, tranquil moment, it almost indescribable. And the way
Wow.
I kind of tell that to people now is I feel like it was Jesus walking down those steps with me and sitting right next to me and being like, you know, like I didn't put you in all of these situations. Like I didn't direct you to have this lifestyle of rebellion and sin, but it was as if he was like these positions that you'd put yourself in through high school, like he was like, I'm going to use this to get his attention. And it did. Like it really did. It brought me to a place of surrender, and I gave my life to Jesus in that moment, and my life was
Mm.
never the same. And so again, I contacted my youth pastor the next day. I don't know if you know him. Do you know Matt Gurton? Do you know any of the Gurtons? They're ELIM affiliated.
No, again, I think there are probably connections out
Okay.
there in like
Okay.
social media because of
Sure.
mutual relationships and stuff.
Sure.
But I've never met him though.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think he graduated ELIM in like '01 or '03, something like that. But uh, yeah, he was the first person I reached out to. He was leading a young adults ministry at the church that I grew up in at the time, and that became my place to be discipled, and that's where I really got
Mm.
integrated into the body. And he led me to ELIM a year later, where I got enrolled. All I wanted to do was just tell people about Jesus. Like it was all I could see myself doing, and
Wow.
yeah, I ended up at Elam a year later, and all the while, like through all of this, like I'm just falling ever more in love with movement and getting more integrated into those disciplines, and I've been doing those, yeah, ever since. So
That's so awesome.
yeah,
So like how cool is it that Jesus doesn't make you stop doing the things that you love, right? Like
exactly
how
right.
cool is it that you get to do the things that you're passionate about? And of course
Yeah,
Jesus is your ultimate passion and he's your ultimate goal. You
totally.
want to tell people about him.
Hmm.
But like how he's worked in your life to allow you to like integrate these different areas of these things that you love, like movement and martial arts and
For sure.
parkour, like these different things. And it's come together and probably still evolving maybe in some ways into like your ministry and who you are and what you
Yeah.
do. Which
Yeah.
that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. So what was your relationship, or did you have a relationship with God prior to 2010? Like was there the kind of thing where you were a kid and you gave your life to the Lord but then stepped away, or was it never really a major part of your life? What was that like for you?
Yeah. So I'd never like formally gave my life. I mean, I loved how I was raised. My parents, my mother led our family to a Presbyterian church when I was 7. She had been going through her own crazy faith walk. She was very much hurt from her upbringing in a very legalistic Catholic home,
Mm,
and she that had. I mean, my mother has a crazy testimony in itself, and she was very much turned away from God and saw God as this angry Zeus figure that would, you know, send lightning bolts if you disobeyed him. And she, around that time when I was 7, that's when she kind of made a crazy uh, change to come to really see who Jesus is and who the Father is, and it wasn't what she had thought as a young woman. And so, yeah, we were led to this Presbyterian church, and um, it was there that not only my mom really came to know the Lord and be discipled, but my father too. When I was 9 years old, I was 9. Yeah, so fast forward to when I was 9, I was in third grade. My father was diagnosed with a very rare paralyzing disease known as Guillain-Barré syndrome. And so what
yeah.
started, I remember, I'll never forget it. It was the day after Christmas in 2000. I think it was just 2000. And it started out as a cough, and later that day, I mean, the man's being rushed to an emergency room, and what we were told was going to be him being in a hospital for maybe 6 days. That actually turned out to be 6 months, and he
Wow.
was all of a sudden, like, he was paralyzed from the neck down. He lost all functionality of all of his muscles, and he essentially had to learn how to walk again. I mean, his life was very much in jeopardy
Hmm.
those first few weeks, and um, praise be to God that that didn't happen. But it was in that moment for my parents to really not only see the Father and in his most, you know, like when you're put in that place, like, and now I can say this as a 30-year-old, that when I was a kid I didn't know what was going on, but you know, looking back as an adult now, like my parents were very much in their most probably vulnerable state between them and God. Like they had nothing, and all they had was, God, get us through this, please. And they only didn't see that, but it was that time that my family really saw the church, because that Presbyterian church that we were at. Um, I think that was the first time my dad saw, because my dad came from a very similar background as my mom. He was very um, he had a huge animosity towards God and the Father, and like he didn't want anything to do with it until this tragic thing happens to him. And the people that really swept up under to help carry him was the church. I mean, this church was incredible, man. They Every day there was some new family at our front door with dinner. Here's a meal.
Mm,
Like, we know you're going through this. Like, and this was like very reoccurring.
yeah.
This wasn't just a one and done thing. And I think twice a week, one of the associate pastors was always at my dad's side while he was in the hospital to walk with him and pray with him. And
It's awesome.
yeah, and so I mean, once he made his recovery, he was back at our house. I mean, he was just like, "No, we're going to church, guys!" Like, and he was shown in a very raw form the love of God, and what the church is meant to be. And so it was
Mm,
that foundation that my parents had, that my sister and I were kind of shown. I mean, essentially from that, we were given, a Christian upbringing. We were sent, we had Sunday school, we had Christian camps every summer. And honestly, it was awesome. It was just something, but we did because all the other kids did it. It wasn't necessarily
hmm.
something I was really thirsty for. I just followed all the other kids, and but I never had. So I knew of God. I wouldn't say I had a relationship with Him, but I would talk to Him every now and then. I was definitely put in those situations from mentors and teachers at the time, but it was never something I devoted to, or
Yeah.
what I mean. So I definitely
Yeah.
had a Christian
Hmm.
upbringing. So I wasn't necessarily, once I gave my life to Jesus, I wasn't on page one. I kind of had some foundation, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of like the outplaying of that verse. If you raise up a child in the way they should go, when they grow older, they
Hmm.
won't depart from it. And it,
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
maybe for everybody it's different. Different experiences, and it
Totally.
sounds like you had an experience where you just needed to come face to face with God's love in
Yes.
a real way that
Yep.
was profound and real and authentic for you.
Yeah.
And that's awesome, man. I think about how, because I grew up in a Christian home, and my
Hmm.
parents had I think my parents had gotten saved like maybe just a couple years or so before I was born.
Okay.
um, and I think about that, and I'm like, I'm so blessed to have grown up in a Christian home, and like, as a kid and as a teenager, like I did some, rebellious things and stuff like that. But for the most part, like I was always connected to the church, and I always knew God, or always knew about God. It's
Hmm.
had a relationship with Him on some level growing up, even as a kid. I'd say like the cliche thing as a kid, like I would say that Jesus was my best friend. I didn't really know what that meant, you know what I mean? But it
Right.
was just kind of
Sure.
kind of there. But I
Sure.
think about like the situation you just mentioned with your parents, and I think about my parents, and I'm like, like not having that background as far as um, being a Christian, or being raised in a Christian home, or
Hmm.
having a relationship with God that's really based on love. I just sometimes I think about that, and it just kind of I'm just so grateful, man, that like somehow somebody stepped in and intervened and talked to my parents about the love of God.
For
You know what I mean?
sure.
And got them to that point so that I could have that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
upbringing. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing how God uses people, and how one thing, like one person sharing the love of Christ with somebody, how it doesn't just affect the life of that person, but potentially like future generations, and so many things. And it's just super cool. So that's what was going
Totally.
through my head while you were talking
Yeah. Yeah. That's
about your
so cool.
parents.
Yeah.
um what was your ELIM experience like, man? I know it's like a very broad question, but
Sure.
just in general,
Sure.
like how would you yeah, what was it like for you?
I loved it. We were in our class was such, I felt like a guinea pig class, because like our freshman year was the last year that they instituted like the dress code and all that stuff. And
Okay.
it was like our very next year. It was like a whole new school. We were able to just essentially wear, like, to an extent, like pretty much just casual what we'd wear out on the streets. And like they were, I remember I became an RA that year, and one of the topics we were discussing during RA training was like, what is the new policy for couples? And like I remember a massive topic of debate was kissing on the cheek and stuff like that. So like it was a very different experience. It was never the same each year. I felt like it was just so much change, so like switching of presidents and stuff like that. But man, I really did love Elam, and I hold that experience dear to my heart. Like, not so much the sense of the teaching. Like, I love the teaching. Some stuff, coming into adulthood and going through some different experiences and going through some different theological discussions and teachings. Like some things I've unlearned since Elam, some things I've gained. But I mean, I think that's to his their own. But the way I always saw Elam, I'm a massive nerd, right? I am very, very, very deep into pop culture and nerdom, and that's one of the reasons I do all the stuff that I do today. Like, I was obsessed with Spider-Man growing up. I was obsessed with Tarzan and the Power Rangers and all that stuff. And so I literally just wanted to do the stuff that I was seeing on television, and that's kind of why it's hilarious. Like, that's honestly the subconscious root reason why I do what I do today. But when I got to Elam, to me, I felt like Harry Potter going to Hogwarts, and we were all learning how to defeat the Dark Lord together. Like like it's so funny. Like that's how I felt.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Right. And so it wasn't necessarily the teachings, but man, it was definitely the relationships and experiences that I gained from Elam that still, I mean, they echo to this day. Like, my closest friends, we all met at Elam. I'm currently in the Rochester area because of the relationships I had gained from Elam. Yeah, and before Elam, I had been on a plane, I think once. I think once, and then after Elam, because missions was my track. Like, that was like my main focus. I had been on a plane maybe 7 or 8 times after Elam. Like, I was just going all over the place. Yeah, I mean,
that's awesome.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I definitely took a lot more from it than anything.
That's awesome, man. What are some of the countries you've been to?
I was able to go to. I was in Costa Rica. I've been to Mexico City 2 times. So I've been to Mexico 3 times, and when people, and I always have to say, like, not a resort. I've never been to a resort in Mexico. I was actually with, the culture, with the people.
Yeah.
I've been to my senior year of Elam. I was able to, for my internship, I spent 6 weeks in England, and I was with a ministry called Bethel, and which is actually an Elam founded organization / church. And while I was there, from England, I got to fly to Ireland, and essentially I lived with.
That's awesome.
I lived in these from the surface, they would just seem like halfway houses, but really it's an organization built entirely around taking alcoholics, drug addicts, homeless, right off the streets without a screening process, and giving them a place to eat, sleep,
wow,
shower. And yeah, I mean, it was an incredible experience. And I just got to do life with these guys for 6 weeks, and they have Bethel houses and churches all over Europe. And so, I spent some time in Birmingham, England, and then I spent some time in Dublin, Ireland. And I got to travel down to London for a little bit. And country-wise, I think that's it. Yeah, that I've actually been able to do ministry. And so, and then, throughout the States, I've been in, Miami, Florida. We were in Baltimore, Washington, D.C., New York City with NISM. And so.
Yeah, man. Well, oh man, that's so cool. I got to do something before I forget. So, so Josiah is apparently Just I don't know if you can see this or not.
So
He
one of, yeah,
says
that's
he
the
says
one.
you kind of look like Justin Timberlake and Robin Williams had a baby.
I know.
I just had to
It's
bring that up.
yeah, it never stops with him. Yeah, Josiah and I met. We met first day at ELIM, and we both had a common ground of being very influenced and having a love for hip hop. Because that was one of the big parts of my testimony was Lecrae. That I so like once I hit middle school and high school, I was very much not really going to church. It was at that age range, like our parents were like, "Hey, we're not going to force you guys to do this. I think you're at the age where you can find and identify this stuff out for yourselves." And that's when I pretty much didn't really go on Sundays. And it wasn't until a really good friend of mine, I'll never forget, in 2009, he showed me hardcore believer. We just had a really good relationship. He showed me Lecrae for the very first time,
Mm.
and man, no joke, I was like, "What is this? What?" My dog's here. I was very much. I thought my first interpretation of Lecrae and Christian hip hop in general was I thought it was a Saturday Night Live skit. Now I thought I didn't take it seriously. I was like, "Is this like what episode
Yeah.
of SNL is this from?" And then I go to see like, "Oh my gosh, he's got multiple songs. Oh my gosh, he's got albums. Oh my goodness, there's like multiple rappers that do this stuff." And I immediately fell in love with it. And whenever I was in a very dark place in high school, like the next day I'm hungover or something like that, I was putting this music into my ears and listening
Mm.
to it. And this was my Sunday morning preaching. I wasn't going to church. Like I wasn't doing any of that stuff. I was just listening to this music. It just was very sombering to me. It just kind of leveled me out multiple times. And that was the gospel that I was. And
Wow.
so once I became a believer, that my mindset was, oh, this was the kind of music this is what really drove me to come to know the Lord. I want to use it to help other people, just like it
Wow.
did with me. And so, yeah, that's when I became, an amateur rapper, and I got to Elam and met Josiah, and we were literally both the same person. And so we did
That's so
music
crazy.
together. Yeah, we did music together for a couple of years, and honestly, it was awesome, man. It was so much fun. But yeah, Josiah and I have a very very long relationship. We're practically brothers, and
It's
yeah.
symbiotic, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so Josiah showed me when he was on a month or two ago, whenever that was, and
Yeah.
shout out to Josiah because I know he's watching, and
Oh
he's the
yeah.
one that basically set this up, right, with me and
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
really appreciate you, bud. Yeah, so he showed me some of his hip hop that he had done. So it was like, hello, I'm Josiah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's his stage name.
Check it out on Spotify. It's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It really is legitimately like I was really surprised because I just didn't know. I mean, I didn't know what to expect when he told me
Sure.
about it. I didn't know about it until I think it was like at the end of the podcast. He just like haphazardly mentioned that he
Yeah.
had recorded some hip hop music, and I was like, dude,
Yeah.
wait, hold on, like go back to that. We need to
Right.
definitely. This is something we definitely need
Right.
to talk about.
Right.
And I loved it, man. Have you guys ever done any like recording together?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We did our senior year of Elam. We did a full studio album
Oh,
that
sweet.
we recorded and released. And I will still like that was 2013, 2014. I'll still find myself listening to it, and it's hilarious because it's stuff that I wrote and recorded 8 years ago now, and I'll listen to it and it's like my past self preaching to me currently. I'll listen to a verse that I wrote and recorded, and I'll be like, "Wow, I actually
That's
really
great.
needed to hear that." Thanks, Garrett. Yeah, it's funny, but I always will have a soft spot in my heart for music. It wasn't something. It was for me. It was definitely just something I did in college, and um, and I thought during that time that music was going to be a long-term thing until uh, until I started getting furthermore into the movement stuff, and I went to a 21 Pilots concert,
Mm.
back when before they like really blew up. They were in
Right. Yeah.
Cleveland, and we were just at the House of Blues, and I went to my first 21 Pilots concert, and I saw the drummer do a backflip off of the piano. And immediately, I mean, it was while I was at ELIM, and I saw that, and I was like, yo, I got to do that at one of Josiah and I's shows. And so I went to Josiah and was like, hey, dude, I'm going to finish like one of our songs, like one of like the heavy hitter banger songs. I'm going to do a front flip off of the stage. And he was like, okay, let's do it. And so I started doing that at shows, and I was getting more excited to do the flip in the show rather than the music itself. And that it was kind of around that time period where I was like, you know what, I want to do more stuff with movement. Like this is what I've loved since I was a boy. Music will always have a near and dear place in my heart, but that's when it was really like apparent, like I want to make movement in ministry like my future. So yeah,
that's so cool. Do you just do flips all the time? Because I feel like if I could just do a standing front flip or back flip, I've always thought this. I've always wanted to learn it. I never learned how to do it, but I was always really into like trampolines and like high dives and stuff like that, and jumping off high stuff and doing flips and things like that. But I was always just like too terrified to like teach myself how to just do a standing backflip.
Sure.
And so I never learned how to do it. But I always thought if I could do that, like if I could just do it like at will, I would do it constantly. Like I would just be talking to people and then just do a backflip. You know what I mean? Like I'll just do it in real life all the time. Like, is that something that you do?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Definitely. Now that I'm definitely in my mid-20s, much more so. Now that I'm 30, I feel like I've done enough of that to where like if people ask me to backflip now, I have no problem being like, dude, I'm too tired. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But I'll still, I mean,
I've done hundreds of thousands of flips.
If it's like little kids,
I'm good.
If it's little kids and they're like, you can do a backflip, I'll gladly do it because I love, like they always give the best reactions. Like adults are like, oh man, that was cool. But little kids just go ballistic. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I do love to. It is fun. It's fun to perform it, every now and then.
Yeah, man. No, it's cool. I just know that if I would just exploit it like crazy,
Sure.
That's super cool, especially if they're talking to someone new who doesn't know that you can do that yet, and just kind of like talking to someone just like, oh, hold on a second.
Yeah. Yep.
That's super cool. So explain tricking or tricking athletics.
Sure. So tricking is essentially the combination of martial arts and gymnastics combined. Tricking, which is now becoming more and more popular, and it was pretty much the most recent movement category that I've gotten involved in. Like so for all the listeners, people will get these confused. There actually is a very big difference between parkour, free running, and tricking. Parkour is by definition getting from point A to point B in the quickest, most efficient amount of time. So parkour by its definition doesn't necessarily involve flips. That's parkour is jumping over walls, climbing up walls, jumping off stuff,
running from cops.
Exactly. Yeah. Trying to get like if I'm running from a cop, I'm probably not going to throw a flip, just in and
look what I can do.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's parkour. Free running is parkour with the flip. So free running is essentially making a parkour run or a parkour line as flashy as you can possibly make it. So that's when you would start to involve flips and those kind of tricks. And then tricking is solely on the ground. Tricking is solely on flat ground, and that's when you're combining kicking with flipping, and you perform it all in a series of combos. Until you finish up.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it really, man, it's
beautiful.
Tricking is probably the one thing I've done the most now in the past couple of years. One, because you just literally need a floor to do it. And two, ground, I call it my ground game. My ground game has always been the weakest. It's easy to throw flips and jump off of walls because you have height and gravity on your side. But when it comes to just you and the floor, that's pure power and strength and reflexes. And it's always far more challenging. And so when I see something that's super challenging, I kind of want to master it. And so, tricking has definitely been the more most recent, and by most recent, I've been doing tricking now for 2 or 3 years consistently. So
How important is stretching in your life?
extremely. I just got
Yeah.
done stretching right before this this
Yeah.
call. Extremely, um, and not even for the sake of the stuff that I do because I want to prevent injury, but really more so I'm a personal trainer too, so I'm always teaching an array of clients, everyone from kids to college athletes to the elderly. And man, when you start to see not just the different age ranges, but the different physicalities that people are in, whether that's, man, I have horrible knees, I have a horrible back, I'm overweight, and you start to understand their history that they do not have a background in stretching at all. It's just not something
Hmm.
they really cared too much
Yeah.
for. It was something they did in high school or for sports to be fresh and ready for a game, but after that, it was nothing. Stretching has now become just a practice of mine. Whether I feel if I were to just stop doing all the stuff that I do tomorrow, stretching is the one thing I would keep because of it promotes longevity and it keeps me from like I don't wake up out of bed going like, oh man, my back. Like I wake up
Yeah.
feeling pretty
Yeah.
fresh and I feel okay because I just have a genuine practice to stretch every day, and nothing extreme, just 10 to 20 minutes a day,
Hmm.
and I'm feeling good. So yeah, stretching is vital. I would
Yeah,
label it.
because it's gonna help you with movements and your ability to,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like all of that, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, I never thought about it until recently, man, because like especially over the past year, like I've been doing a lot more, like going to the gym a lot more and
Mm-hmm.
running and stuff
Awesome.
like that.
Yeah.
Used to be a really big, like running used to be a really big part of my life, and then I
Sure.
I went through like a season where I was like depressed and I I gained more weight than
Uh
you know
huh.
what I mean? Like it snuck up on me.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that it was happening. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like one of those things. I was kind of in a fog for a while and
Sure.
not paying attention to my habits. That was a few years ago,
Okay.
but like over the past couple of years, like I've been more disciplined about working out and running and going to the gym and
Awesome.
stuff like that. But it wasn't until very very recently that I started to like I guess learn more about how important it is just to stretch. Because again, stretching was
Mm-hmm.
something that we would do. We do like in gym class, we do like the little like
Yep.
we do like arm
Yep.
circles and butterflies and stuff like that. And we'd be like, it was just something that we did even when I was in high school and I was on like the track team. It was just something that we did for a few minutes before we would go out and run. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
really recognized how important it is. But it's crazy how if you just will start to like just like develop some consistency, as you said, like what did you say, 10 to 20 minutes a day
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something like that,
Yeah.
how
It's all
you
you
can
really need.
really dramatically increase your flexibility
Very much
and
so.
it
Yep.
changes so much
Yep.
about your lifestyle in general, just having that
Mm-hmm.
increased movement.
It does, and even uh, not such the practice of doing it, but biologically, it opens up. It increases the oxygen going to your brain. It increases blood flow. It doesn't just make you flexible. It really does kind of jump starts your organs. It jump starts your kind of infrastructure of your
Yeah.
body.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you done any kind of like yoga type stuff? Like, are you into that? Because because people that have never done yoga look at yoga and they're like, oh, like that's for whatever. Like people like that's for wusses or that's for like yoga is
Sure,
ridiculously
yoga's
hard.
so hard. Oh my
It's
goodness, yeah.
crazy hard.
Yoga is
Yoga
so
terrifies me.
difficult. Yeah, I've done yoga a couple of times. That's not something I really go for a lot. Um, but I would definitely recommend yoga to people. I love it when I
Yeah.
do it. Sure.
Well, I don't know if this is going to take us off topic
Hmm.
because I'm not sure what it's related to, but Josiah said to ask you about Givein. I saw your face.
Given was that was like my stage name when I was in hip hop music.
Oh, see, in my head, I was thinking it was like some kind of ministry with movement or something. Like I was just thinking that it was something related to that.
Nope, nope. That's just an
All
old
right.
name, and it's something he never will ever let go of. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, let's go for it. So tell me about Givein.
Given was it? I was trying. I mean, I was just trying to be like the catchy, like everyone in Christian rap at the time had to have like people didn't necessarily use their names
Right.
for music. You had to have a nickname, and I went for. I had some horrible things that will never ever see the light of day. But given, I essentially just took the first name, my initials. I just took GI, and I was like, how can I
Okay.
make this? How can I make this like a clever Christianese stage name? And Given is what I came up with, and I didn't include the E, so I could look, I don't know, edgy.
Edgy.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
pretty
man.
edgy.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
cool. That's cool. So do you have is any of your music out there? Like can it be accessed on Spotify?
Yeah, I thought Josiah and I. So the album we recorded was our group together. Josiah and I, our group was called Remade, and that's still on Spotify and iTunes, on Apple Music. And then I released a solo EP in 2014 on Noise Trade. I think it was noisetrade.com. I don't know if it's still there. I haven't looked in a long time, but um, yeah, that's I actually yeah we do have some music
That's
on the
awesome.
music platforms. Yeah,
That's awesome. Guys, check that out. Come on. I'm going to check it
do
out as
it,
soon as we're done here
do it,
for
man.
sure.
I'll send you the link.
For sure, man. Yeah, I'll if you send me the link, I'll share it. I'll put it in the show notes and make sure that we
Sweet.
try. Yeah. That's awesome, man. I love that. I love that kind of stuff. How how do these worlds of like ministry and
Yeah,
wanting to talk about, tell people about Jesus and,
yeah.
like how does the world of ministry combine with the
Hmm.
world of movement and health and all of that as far as increasing awareness and just
Right.
like how is that working for you right now, and kind of like what is your vision for
Sure.
how you want to increase people in ministry and stuff like that in the church, as far as their awareness of the importance of movement and health and wellness.
Yes. So I in 2016 I had moved back to Cleveland for a couple of years. It's just something I felt called to do it, and I felt like that was where I was meant to be. And um, I one of the big so yeah, I guess I can start with this. It was 2016. Videos were now a thing on Instagram, and people were encouraging me to post my content more, and like actually filming my content and posting it. And that's when I really started to get on the social media game of posting movement content. And one of the comments I would always constantly receive was, "Hey, you should do stunts in movies." And I
Mm.
was like, "Oh snap, that's an awesome idea. Why have I never thought of that before?" Um, and so yeah, I kind of just started telling people like, yeah, I'm thinking about getting into this, and my mom caught wind of it. And during that time, Fast and Furious 8 was filming in Cleveland. Cleveland actually, funny enough, has a quite the movie scene. It's
Mm.
got a low tax incentive, so it's just cheap for movies
Oh
and
wow.
productions to go there. And there was a locals casting agent, and it was kind of one of my big reasons I wanted to move back to Cleveland, which will become important in a little bit. But yeah, movies was a big reason I wanted to go back, and so I got on this locals casting database. Like I just wanted to get on a film project, and it wasn't Fast and Furious 8, but that's where the advertising for they needed extras is where these local casting databases started to pop up on social media. Like, hey, we need
Okay.
extras, and my
Cool.
mom just sent me a link, and I got onto one of them. And I started getting these emails of requirements that they would want for extras. And I started replying. I started sending pictures, and this is like my height, my weight, yada, yada. And I wasn't getting anything. And so 5 months go by, and now a Netflix film is filming in Cleveland. And I get this email like, hey, we need a body double for 8 days to be on set. I was like, oh, cool. And I'm looking at all the requirements and I match it pretty well. And so I send all of the email over and I get a call directly from the casting director herself.
That's awesome.
And she invited me to be on set, and I pretty much booked this gig to be a body double, or otherwise known as a stand-in on this film for 8 days. And I made it my mission to get to know the stunt coordinator. I did all my research. I was like, I got to find the stunt coordinator, and I did.
Smart.
I was introduced to him, and he wanted to know my skill set and my background, and he loved what he heard, and he invited me to be essentially a member of his team. And that is where I started to get integrated more into the film community and the stunt community. And now being more integrated in the stunt community, I kind of had this, I felt like it was an obligation to post more content and to be now, I started to, and this starts to take a kind of like a backsliding turn. I started to really see my identity as the movement guy, and started to like, it was no longer becoming Garrett, the Christ follower. I was the Christian, the ninja Christian, right? Like that started to become my psyche, and I started to really have to, like, I felt like
sounds pretty dope though. To be honest,
it does actually. Now, like looking at it, yeah, I felt like I needed to emulate that across social media, and it really was taking up my time, my energy, my focus. And so, like, all the while, I'm now starting to feel like my entire career needed to circumference this new identity that I have. And so I was like, I need to make movement my thing. And so then fast forward a couple of years, I started getting no stunt stuff yet. I got booked on films as an extra, as a stand-in. I got to meet a lot of celebrities and really cool directors. And it was a really cool experience. But man, like, people would ask me, I would start to use it as, I guess, a false platform. I would tell people I was going on these movie sets to be a witness and to be a missionary. Like, I was starting to say, like, movies are my mission field, right? And I would never talk to anyone really about Jesus. Like, I was totally just being selfish, and no, I just wanted to be more well known and be on movies just to be on movies, and not necessarily become famous, but I was just essentially kind of feeding just feeding the selfish desire, and it wasn't kingdom centered. And that wasn't until we get to 2019. And so 2019 rolls around, and I befriend this couple that owns their own gym close to my parents' house, and it's called FMU Fitness, which stood for Fit Me Up. And it was owned by these believers that are so hardcore, on fire. Their entire gym motto, as soon as you walk in the gym, it is faith, family, and fitness. Like, that is their MO. And that really changed things for me. I was kind of looking for, I wanted, when I'm not on a movie set, or I wanted, my cash flow and income to come from movement into some capacity. And I get introduced to this gym, and they brought me on as a adult coach. And I was just coaching like an adult's fitness class, like 2 or 3 times a week. That was essentially it. But one day, in like the break time, the one owner came up to me and said, "Hey dude, by the way, if you ever want to use this facility for your own personal training, like, go for it. Like, if we're not using the gym, it's all yours." And it was massive, just like, that wasn't like, he completely planted a seed in my head. I was like, man, that wasn't even on my radar. But like, this gym was definitely like Ninja Warrior focused. Like, so it wasn't your typical like bench presses and squats and treadmills. It actually had warped walls. It had pull-up bars everywhere. It had salmon ladders, which is, if you've ever seen Ninja Warrior, it's like where you take a bar and you jump, you skip like bars using like a pull-up bar or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it was
Ninja Warriors focused. And so
that's awesome.
It was the perfect playground. And so that's when I made the decision. I actually started teaching my own, I had my own practice where I would teach kids parkour, and then I was teaching adults martial arts and kind of like skill set calisthenics, so like handstands and muscle ups and even flips. And I was doing that, and so it was that summer of 2019 that the Lord really started to, I guess, kind of re-catch my attention and kind of start to, one, prepare my heart for something that was about to go down, that I won't go really into detail too much, but I was starting to remember, essentially. I was starting to remember my purpose, my mission, my love for God, and my kind of like my big why. Like, why is it I'm doing all this stuff? And so, I'm teaching these kids. I'm in this, Christian-based gym, and it was definitely just helping rewire my psyche in that regard. And then came August and September of 2019, and all I'll say is I just went through my life took a very quick turn, and I was kind of put in this pretty traumatic experience. I was just in a very, very, very dark place. Someone very dear to me left me, and my whole world was shaken. And it was in that time that all of that stuff, all of like the movie, grinding for like all that stuff, it just all hit the wayside, and all I had was just me and the Father. It
Wow.
was such a, looking back, like now 2.5 years later, it was the most probably bittersweet moment in my entire season of my life. Like, it was extremely hard. I was going through a grieving process. I was in a very dark place, but at the same time, that was probably the most real my relationship with God has ever been. Kind of, I
Wow.
mean, going back to like my father, like going back to my parents during that traumatic time with my father in the hospital. Like, now it was it was now my turn as an adult. Like, this was my time to really just see God for who he really is. And so that's where I understood sonship to its most rawest form. And all I wanted at that point, it was just like, all I want to do, man, is follow the Lord. Like, and it was such a season of repentance. Like, I was like, God, I'm so sorry I've made such an idol out of the stuff I was trying to achieve. Like, and funny enough, I like all this grinding, I hadn't achieved a stunt in a movie yet, right? So like, I hadn't even gotten that. And this horrible thing happens to me, and all of a sudden I start getting all these offers. I found myself, one, I was in desperate need of income. This situation put me in a very tough spot financially, and I was like, Lord, I really need your provision here. And a couple weeks later, while I'm going through this horrible thing, I was offered to be in a docuseries that National Geographic was filming about World War II. And I'm a massive World War II buff. And I got booked on this docuseries to play a captain. And I was a captain of a submarine in World War II. And I was on set for that for about 2 weeks. And one, that provided a lot of income for me. But two, it was just kind of a funny, like, I wasn't doing it to be noticed. I wasn't doing it to, all I was doing, needed money. Two, I was like, God, before getting out of my car every day, getting on set, it was like, God, please use me, help me. And it was so, man, like the conversations that I had with like my colleagues on that show was incredible. I talked to so many people about Jesus. I found out so many people knew about Jesus, and like we actually had very similar like mutual connections in churches in the area. And I was getting kind of more integrated into the body in that regard, and it was awesome. And then it was while I was on set for that, I get an email from my stunt coordinator. So now I've been affiliated with this stunt team for about 3 years. I have a good relationship with my stunt coordinator, and he reaches out and goes, hey guys, big one, the Russo brothers, AKA those who just directed Avengers Endgame. It had just come out a couple months prior. Russo brothers are now going to be in Cleveland filming a movie with Tom Holland starring in it. And the stunt coordinator of that film wants to see the local talent. And so he reached out to me. You guys have a 2-minute audition window in front of the stunt coordinator to show him what you got. And that was like, oh snap. But even then, I was still in such a place of like, it wasn't like, oh my God, I need to do this. It was just like, man, I really need money. That's a pretty cool, like, this is a cool email. Like, I really do need money though. Like, I'll go for it. And I did. And I met the stunt coordinator for this film. I had 2 minutes in front of him. And so I did I pulled my one stunt buddy and we did a fight in front of him. We choreographed a fight scene really quick and we did that. And then I did a quick tricking sequence. And he liked what he saw. And at the time, I didn't know he liked what he saw because a couple of weeks went by and I didn't hear anything. And I knew the film had started filming. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I got it. Oh, well. And I then get a call from the stunt coordinator out of nowhere. And it was hilarious because the call was from Pontiac, Michigan. And I thought it was just a scam call. So I picked up and it was just like, hello, because I was just expecting a scam call. And the voice was, Garrett, this is Danny Mays. I'm the stunt coordinator of the film Cherry. How are you? And it was like immediately, like I had to perk up and be like, oh, I'm good, sir. How are you? And so, long story short, I was on the set for this film for 6 days. I was a driver for 5 days, and then the 6th day, I came on set as I got the call. I was stunt doubling one of Tom Holland's co-stars. I had to sign a Screen Actors Guild contract, which was that is like the big promotion in the stunt film community. That is when you are eligible to join the Screen Actors Guild, and when you are, that's when you've hit it. Like, now I'm a professional stuntman. And all that to say, though, before getting out of my car for every single one of those days, I was now in the place of, Lord, use me on this movie set. Like, it was no longer, like, I wasn't doing this for my gain anymore. Like, I was simply just wanting to, I really did see the film set as my mission field. And I'm not going to say that God, put me through that really traumatic experience to get me to that point, but he definitely used it. And I was, like those seasons in our lives where we feel it's God against us, man, like looking back, I probably wouldn't give that season up for anything because now I see him through such a new lens that I wouldn't have seen him before. And now next thing you know is I'm in the back seat of a 96 BMW with Tom Holland, and the dude is dragging me constantly out of this car because that was the stunt. I had to be a dead body. I had to be a corpse, and he had to drag me out of this car because apparently the character I was doubling for got shot by a cop, and they had to, dump the body on the side of the road. And that was a stunt. And next thing I'm having a conversation with Spider-Man, like the real Spider-Man. And dude, it was just incredible. Like he really came through in that moment. And it wasn't until I had fully surrendered to him that I actually did get my first official stunt gig. And
awesome.
All the while, like while all that's going on, I'm still teaching kids parkour. I'm still doing this thing, but now I have this new appreciation for it. I kind of started getting this vision. I reached out to Alex Seidler, who is currently the Global Ministries Director of ELIM Fellowship. And I reached out to him and I just said, hey man, listen, here's the thing I'm doing in Cleveland. I have this gym, I'm doing all this stuff, but man, I have such a vision to see this being utilized so hardcore for the kingdom. I would love to teach missionaries and ministers not just how to be healthy, but how to be stronger so that they can physically be more equipped to hit the mission field, to have a more effective ministry. And so like my kind of mantra I developed in my head was healthier bodies for the body, like capital B. And he was his response was like, dude, that's crazy that you're saying this right now. We're in the process of revamping our entire missionary training process. And the one thing that God is bringing to the forefront is physical health and wellness. And now you're bringing this, you're emailing this to me. And so it was just a crazy.
It's awesome.
It was, man, it was nuts. And so I do the movie.
Dude, well, sorry to interrupt. You talk about, talking about longevity in ministry. I mean, we talk about longevity in ministry and we focus so much on the spiritual side, which is of course intensely important. And we talk a lot about, people burning out. We talk a lot about, ministers falling into sin. We talk about all these different things, but like, this is such an important area that is probably the most neglected area
Yeah.
overall is like, okay, what about your physical health? Because
Yep.
obviously your physical health is going to dramatically affect, longevity in ministry,
Right.
whether
Right.
it's, I mean, just being healthy,
Yep.
in general
Yep.
can help you live longer. Obviously,
Yeah,
like
man.
that's the obvious way. But then even as you said, like stronger bodies and strength, that you have more
Mm-hmm.
energy and more,
Yeah.
stamina,
Yeah.
and just you're more equipped to deal with the everyday tasks and the things that you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's so cool. I love it.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is like how many, especially in westernized American culture, do you have an extremely overweight pastor telling me to, you need to get lust out of your life. Like, why are you drinking so much on the weekends? Like, while this man who
Right,
is just
right.
piling food into his gullet, like you're
Wow.
doing the same thing I am.
Wow.
But
It's
just
for
to,
sure a
it's the
double
same.
standard.
It is. And
Right?
so,
Wow.
it's just one of the things that has been completely neglected. And going back to my experiences at Elam, um, the times that I trained the hardest was when I knew I was about to hit another country, when I knew I was about to travel and do ministry. That the weeks leading up to that is when I would actually train my hardest. And it really came through, especially in Costa Rica. Costa Rica was such a test of kind of my not theory, but just test of what I believed in. Like if I train super hard, can I be super effective in a tropical, very temperate country
Mm.
like Costa
Uh-huh.
Rica? And man, I mean, every day it was ministry all day, every day. I mean, we were going to different public schools that didn't have air conditioning and being invited to their auditoriums for assemblies to do ministry, and to preach the gospel. And we had to have energy all day. And it did. Like I was able, like, man, I was covered in sweat for 24 hours a day, but I wasn't holding back. I was able to effectively pray for those that needed prayer. I was effectively able to preach to those that needed to hear the gospel. And it
Mm.
wasn't like I was doing push-ups or doing flips or doing, I just had the capacity to preach and to pray. Like that's all it wasn't like I was
Yeah.
going there
Yeah.
to compete in anything. But when it comes to the mission field, you need energy for things that you never thought you would need energy for, especially when you're in a completely different country that your lungs, and
Yeah, man.
your physicality is not used to. And so that was really my big push for. That was one of the big things that I think God brought to the forefront of my mind when I was reaching out to Alex. And so, yeah, a couple months went by. I did the movie thing, and I kind of all of this experience that I've been in, it kind of led me to this place of, I think it's time for me to start over and start fresh and somewhere new. And that was immediately, it was like God was like, well, here's the email you sent out to Alex, and here's the conversation that you got going, and here is a whole network of people that you have built from your time at Elam. Like it just felt like Rochester, New York was the place to be. And so yeah, I moved back out here and working with Elam Fellowship and creating an entire physical health and wellness curriculum for the entire organization that I'll be releasing soon. And I'm
Awesome.
personal training at a local gym. And so yeah, man, I just call it full-time movement and ministry. So
That's so
yeah,
cool.
and
That's
then
so
movie
cool, man.
stuff I'm still like the stunt team and I are meeting in like 2 weeks. I think we have another meeting where I'll get to train with the team and kind of get the load. Like and I'm only 4 hours from Cleveland, so I'm still not that far from my family. If a movie comes up, I can, it's just a 4 hour drive, and I'll just crash with my parents for however long the film goes for, and yeah. So just trying to just utilize my gifts as much as I can, and it just brings me to it's just brought me to really good relationships, really good just platforms to bring the gospel.
Yeah,
So
man. It's so cool. Well, I love so much of what you just said. I love what you said about that idea of, for you on a personal level, training harder when you knew that you were going to be going onto the mission field and
mm-hmm,
going into some other countries and things like that. I think about, because I know earlier you mentioned Mexico City,
mm-hmm,
and Mexico City, that they're seven something thousand feet
The elevation,
of
yes.
elevation.
The one
Um,
highway they have is the
yeah.
highest highway in North America, I
Yeah,
believe.
like
Or,
we've spent a bunch of time in Mexico City,
mm-hmm.
and just you're not used to it.
Nope.
Getting off the plane and walking fast through the airport to try to
Yeah,
get to get
yeah,
to your car or
yeah,
whatever. You're like winded by the time
yeah.
you get through because you're just
Yep.
you're fresh. You're not used to it, and so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, man,
I
stuff
ran
like
a
that.
5K in Mexico City.
Yeah.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, that was a mistake. I've talked
Man,
to
I was
people, man,
so
that would come
and
to visit.
I did cross country in high school and stuff, but it was a whole new ball game
Hmm.
doing that in Mexico
Yeah.
City for sure.
Yeah, it's totally right. Like I would talk to people that were very fit, very much in shape, that were
Mm-hmm.
into like jujitsu type stuff or like mixed martial arts, and
Sure.
they would fight, and then then they would come down and kind of like spar or do some wrestling or that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing in Mexico, and how just like instantly
How
noticing how
fast?
tired,
Yeah.
how quickly you get winded, and how quickly
Yep.
you get tired.
Yep.
So yeah, man, all the stuff that you're talking about, just increasing your lung capacity, increasing your movements, and
Right.
everything.
Right.
It's so cool, and it has such, when I think about it, it's so obvious. But again, it's something that I think we just neglect. We tend to really neglect in the
Mm-hmm.
church.
Yeah.
As an important part of even just like the stewardship of our bodies. We always talk about your body's the temple, of the Holy Spirit. And we always, we relate it to very specific things, but it's like, okay, like how about this? How about your health? And not just in
Yeah.
terms of you shouldn't smoke cigarettes, but in
Sure.
terms of like, how are you feeding yourself and how are you,
Yes.
really just, I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
stewardship issue when it comes down to it.
Absolutely.
And yeah, how would you say that somebody? Because I know that you're a personal trainer.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help somebody just get started? Because I know people, and this is kind of like a meta type question, like where but it just came into my mind because I think it could be helpful. Like
Mm-hmm.
just anybody who in general just doesn't have good health habits as far as exercise and routine and stuff like that,
Sure.
and it could be intimidating for somebody to look at where they are and kind of where they need
Sure.
to go. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just in this country, we're like 40+% obese.
Right.
There's a
Right.
very high obesity rate in our
Yeah.
country, and so just for like uh, anybody who
Sure.
recognize that they need to make some changes but not totally sure how to do it, like what do you usually recommend as just like some first steps, whether it's mindset or something physical or whatever that
Yeah.
is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people will really complicate that question. They think they need to completely radically change their lives and get right into an extreme, physical discipline. Like, oh, tomorrow I'm going to work out for 2 hours, even though they've
Right.
never done that in their entire lives. And
Yeah.
that's just not, it's just not practical. You're not going to uphold that by any
Hmm.
means, maybe for even a couple of days. It all, I simplify that. It's more so mindset, yes, but simply just daily habits. And so my encouragement to people that are just starting, I think it's as easy as saying, not instead of saying tomorrow I'm going to work out for 2 hours, in a very intense with a very intense regime. Tomorrow, as soon as I get out of bed, I'm going to go walk for a mile.
Hmm.
I'm going to walk for a mile, and I'm just going to incorporate more greens in my diet tomorrow. And
Love
just
it.
starting with that, and that what that does is it's not forcing you to, have a six pack, by in 90 days, but it's starting to rewire how you think about movement and how you see how much that will actually benefit how you think throughout the day, how you focus throughout the day. If I just start my day with just something as easy as walking a mile, and I've noticed that, all of a sudden my what's the word? My metabolism is better.
Mm.
I'm able to focus on talking to my son or my daughter more. I'm actually listening to them, and my mind isn't somewhere else. And they start to see that what just that simple change on day one does, then, they start to make it a habit. And that's when, after 2 or 3 weeks of doing that, like, hey, you know what? Instead of walking a mile after getting out of bed, I think I'm actually going to do a quick YouTube workout video. I think I want to step it up. And it's not out of a sense of, it's not even out of a sense of motivation. It starts to turn into a sense of discipline. Like if I want to feel good throughout the day, I know I need to do this as soon as I get out of bed.
Yeah.
If I want to, my insides to feel good, I know I need to just put more greens in my diet and just and not, Oreos at night, maybe not eat as many. They're still really good. I don't believe anyone who says that they don't like Oreos. Like you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's less of a sense of being motivated to move and more of a sense of just developing a discipline and understanding that it's far more beneficial to not only you but to others, and how you treat others. Yeah,
That's
definitely.
good.
It's more
That's
simple
good.
than we think. We like to complicate it.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the other things too is that like I've fallen into the trap of saying like, oh, like I'm too busy, or like it's hard for me to add
Mm-hmm.
this into my routine because of whatever. But I think what
Yeah.
you're saying is so true, that when you do add it into your routine, and
Mm-hmm.
not in this like crazy intense way. I mean, yeah, start with 30 minutes, but
Sure.
adding that into your routine,
Yep.
it will help you actually throughout the rest of the day to think better, to be more clearly. I think
Yes.
overall to be more productive,
Yes.
and especially if you're not, if you're coupling it with changing eating habits and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure for the first few days, your body's probably going to be like really mad at you, and so making you feel like you're
Yeah, there's
tired
definitely
and
going to
that you
be
don't have
somewhat
energy and stuff
shock.
like that.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
like your system can flips over like relatively quick,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll start to feel good. You'll start to feel better. One of the things that I've noticed, Garrett, in my life is like when I'm working out, and whether that's going to the gym or just going out for a run, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, but like when I've got some level of consistency with exercise in my life, it really does kind of like filter over into the other areas. There's
It
something, I don't know,
does.
maybe it's just the way my mind is, but I imagine that most people are like this, that when you start to get disciplined in one area of your life, there's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like this automatic thing that happens
Yeah.
where it helps you to become disciplined in
Mm-hmm.
other areas of your life as well. And
Yeah.
so I just think we've got to get over that initial hump of the like from being where I am now to being like kind of just getting over that mind battle that says that it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
so hard or it's going to be this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what you said is really, really awesome. Kind of giving yourself some quick wins where it's
Yeah.
not, I've got to commit to doing 90 push-ups today, or
Right.
I've got to commit to do it. Like if you've never done
It's just
8
not
push-ups,
viable.
like don't
Yeah.
try to do 90, like
Right.
walk around the block a few times. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It's really good. I like that. Um, so there's a question here that
Mm-hmm.
came up a little while ago that I wanted to ask you as you were kind of talking about. I think it kind of came up after I asked you that question about the molding together of ministry with movement and health and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the question was, have you ever encountered people that either judge or assume that what you're doing is not spiritual or that it's not ministry? And if you do, how do you deal with that?
Sure. I have. And it's such a I don't want to say this I don't want this to come off as mean or judgmental. It's just simply how it came. The people the people that normally would say that, and I mean we're only talking two or three that I can remember. The
Yeah,
people that
yeah,
would
yeah, yeah,
say that to me usually fall into that 40%
yeah,
percentile of
yeah.
being
I'm sure.
obese. And it's like, I mean, that right there is kind of just like, this needs to change in our culture and in our society, because that really is the population that will say those kind of things to me. And how I simply deal with it is, um, I mean, I mean, I could bring up verses from the Bible, but more so I bring up characters from the Bible
Mm,
that I think and the top three that I think express to me the how vital it is to take care of your bodies is always King David, Jesus, and the Apostle Paul.
Mm,
And what they were able to do, not only because of who they were, but because they actually took care of their bodies. Um, and so I'll bring up characters from the Bible, and I love to say, so kind of going along with what you're saying, how one area of our life corresponds to the others. When it comes
hmm
to physical, spiritual, and mental health, I've always described it as like a tethered rope. And when one of those starts to falter, it's a pretty good estimation that the others are going to start to fall as well. And so like
For sure.
that's simply what I just that's kind of um, how I go off of it. I'll just kind of just describe, because when it comes to those conversations, I could say everything that I believe, and it could be true. But if these people aren't willing to change the way they live and kind of use it as an excuse, like, oh, physical
Yeah.
health, well, that can't be
Yeah.
ministry, that's not
Yeah.
spiritual. They use that as an excuse to pretty much be unhealthy to their bodies.
hmm
um, and so yeah, I mean, it's essentially just sometimes just talking to a brick wall. And
Yeah.
like, yo man, like, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Like, we'll see how you feel in 10 years. Like, I don't know if like it's God ordained that you develop diabetes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I
Right.
feel
Right.
like um yeah,
Yeah,
it's
man.
I mean, that's just usually the stereotype of what happens. Like, those are just that's the general population that questions what I do as ministry. So
Yeah.
it's tough.
Well, for sure, like people in Bible times, they
Yes.
walked a lot, and and they didn't, the food they
Yeah.
were eating was way different than the food that
Obviously,
we're
yeah. There's
eating.
yeah.
And you know what I mean? They weren't,
Mm-hmm.
most people, unless you were like in some kind of a royalty, like a very, very wealthy situation, like you weren't overeating.
Right.
It's just like, different lifestyle, different habits where like
Mm-hmm.
everything is so accessible
Yeah.
to us today, and then the quality of the food that we're eating, unless you're very careful about buying certain types of organics and
Sure.
things like that, like because
Sure.
even just a lot of times regular organic doesn't even necessarily mean much, but
Mm-hmm.
like it's just, you know what I mean, like it's they had a different kind of a lifestyle. And yeah, like I just think for us, like because of how accessible it
Right.
is for us to just find so much junk food, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
easy for us not to use our legs to get us places, and you know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's
Right.
easy to, if we want to, it's really like you don't have to really do, like you don't have to work hard to have a sedentary lifestyle. It just kind of,
Right.
because it's just,
Totally.
that's what's presented to you. You have to come at it from the opposite way and be intentional about
Mm-hmm.
developing healthy eating habits and fitness
Right.
habits and things
Right.
like that. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
but yeah, as you said, I think that's a great response. And I just think that overall we've definitely got to learn how to take care of our bodies. And
Right.
whew, yeah, man, it's important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
um as you were talking, I thought of something that I wanted to say, and I can't remember what it was, but anyway, man, I appreciate your time. How cool was that when you, like, you mentioned it, but how cool was that really, like meeting Tom Holland
It
as
was,
such a big Spider-Man fan?
yeah, man. Like, that was crazy. It was funny. It was one of those things, like, as soon as I started talking to him, it was just like talking to another mid 20 something.
Hmm
Like, when I was in the moment, it was he's just really easy to get to know. And he's definitely not intimidating when you're talking to him. It wasn't until, I was driving home that I had to like pinch myself and be like, holy crap, that just happened. But it was more so an honor because when I was brought to set, I was with the stunt coordinator, and he walked me over to all of them to talk about how this was going to go. And it was Tom and the Russo brothers, and the stunt coordinator introduced me to them, and then they all introduced themselves with their names first. It wasn't like
That's awesome.
it was just so, it was humbling. Like, they were very down to earth. They weren't, these like, oh, we're extremely special people. We obviously know, who we are. No, it was, and it just opened the door so much more to just literally, I got to tell all three of them, both the Russo brothers and Tom, like, hey, it's like an honor to be working with you guys. I'm a massive Marvel fan and a massive, superhero nerd. So yeah, it was incredible.
Is he your favorite Spider-Man?
He's my favorite Peter Parker.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
He's my favorite Parker. I think after seeing the new movie, my favorite out of the three, I think it would have to be Andrew Garfield. I love Andrew Garfield as an actor. I loved it. I love him as a character.
I was a big fan of Andrew Garfield. I thought, and a lot of people didn't. I felt like he's like the least favorite across the board. He got a lot of hate.
I freaking loved him.
But I loved him because like I loved him in The Social Network, and like I've loved him. I just like him as an actor. I think he's like quirky. He's kind of like he's I just like the characters that he portrays. I thought he did a good job as Peter Parker in that too. So yeah, I liked him a lot. But yeah, man, I love Tom Holland. I love the way he does it. It's
he's the most comic book accurate, in my opinion.
What'd you think of the newest movie?
I saw it. I've seen it 3 times.
3 times?
Yeah. I cried the first time.
Yeah.
Multiple times. Yeah. It was such a
dude,
because that movie, I mean, that was the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man came out in 2002. I was 11 years old. I was still getting influenced by all these. That was one of the big movies that influenced me to be like, man, I want to be just like that when I grow up. And so to see him on screen again and kind of like the culmination and like understanding like, man, I had just been in a movie with, the Spider-Man Tom Holland because of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man that I saw when I was a kid. It was just one of those moments that it was just such a surreal experience in the theater for me personally. Yeah.
It was. I thought they did such an otherworldly job. They did an incredible job of paying like fanfare and just really like throwback to all the kids that really did grow up with Spider-Man being their favorite superhero. I thought they did just a fantastic job of that. I think across the board, he's probably the favorite of, as I can't even think the way to word it, but yeah, like he's a lot of people's favorite superhero.
Agreed. Yep.
You know what I mean? He's just because he's relatable and the one-liners and all that kind of stuff. Exactly. Yeah. And it was so cool. I don't want to get into specifics and stuff just because
I could talk about
anybody hasn't seen it or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so good. I get choked up every time I watch Endgame.
Yep.
And so like I can't because Iron Man. I mean, it's those two for me. Like Iron Man and Spider-Man are like my favorites, and I love. I never was into Thor before, but I love Thor now because Chris Hemsworth
does such a great
amazing.
job.
He's hilarious and awesome. But but yeah, like those two, and knowing how it ends, and just seeing like those certain things, like when like that very quick reunion between Tony and Peter Parker in Endgame.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And then like just that whole thing. I just watch it and I'm just I get so chill. Like I have to mentally prepare myself. I can't just, as much as I love that movie, I won't just watch it willy-nilly, as they say.
Oh no,
I won't
you have to be in a certain like mindset.
I have to really prepare. Like this is gonna affect me for the next few hours.
Yep.
I know it's a movie. I know it's not real, but it messes with me, man.
It pulls the heartstrings, man. It gets you.
It does. It's so crazy. Well, that's awesome, man. What did you think? I'm just curious. What did you think of Eternals?
I liked it. I liked Eternals. And I posted this, I think, on Facebook after I saw it. I think Eternals did Justice League better than Justice League did.
Yeah,
Like when after I
yeah,
saw Eternals, I
yeah.
was like, this is what the Justice League movie should have been.
Hmm.
Because I was not a fan. I love the Snyderverse Justice League was pretty dope. But yeah, I think like they did everything right in regards to like they made Icarus such a Superman. Like that's how Superman should have looked in Justice League. Um, Makari, the speedster, like this is how all speedsters should look on film and
That
on
was really
screen.
well done. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I liked it a lot. I love the humor. I love the dialogue. I don't know why it's getting so much. I know everyone's like it was definitely the
Yeah.
worst Marvel movie of, but I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I was actually really I was pleasantly surprised because
Mm-hmm.
I had heard I hadn't heard honestly a lot, but anything that I heard wasn't good.
Sure.
Um, and so and I think one of the biggest criticisms across the board that I hear from most people is in the area of character development. But I mean, how do you develop, 9 characters
Sure.
in
Oh,
2 hours?
yeah,
You know what I mean?
totally. Yeah.
The one thing that I wish they had kind of done was spend a little bit more time developing or highlighting the not even so much the character but the strength of
Mm.
Icarus,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like they could have made it a little bit more epic as it went on. Because like, and
Sure.
I did that sort of same comparison in my head to Justice League, and
Yeah.
how when and sorry, there's spoilers, mild spoilers here if you haven't seen Justice League, but that's a few years old, so
Yeah.
sorry, not sorry, but
You're not
the
missing out.
yeah the thing about Superman was you really felt other for the other superheroes that were fighting against him, because it was so obvious his strength level compared to them on an individual level, that you
Mm-hmm.
were like, yo, how, like, there's no way they can take this guy down. Like, I think they did
Right.
a good job at sort of showing his strength in that
Yeah.
way, compared
Yeah.
to the rest of them. So that was like the one thing where I was like, I feel like they could have done better on that. But I thought overall I really liked it. I enjoyed it.
Totally. Yeah. Me
Um,
too.
but yeah, the one thing that I think, well, Zack Snyder is awesome at just like the visual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the one thing that I think movies like Justice League, if you were to just take like a still frame of almost like any section of that movie, it looks incredible. They do a really good job
For
at,
sure.
like, if you're just like watching the movie and you pause it, like that scene right there could be
Yeah.
like a movie poster.
Cinematography is always good. Yeah.
Yeah, they do a
Yeah.
fantastic job at that. But overall, I'm like, they got nothing. They got nothing on
Mm-hmm.
Marvel.
No. Nah.
um, well, anyway, thank you, Garrett, man. I appreciate
Yeah,
your
man.
time. Really enjoyed it. Let's
Me
just
too.
real quick let people know where they can find you. I know. Let's
Sure.
see. I think I've got your Instagram. I'll pop that up on the screen for anybody that's watching. But tell
Mhm.
people where they could find you, either on
Yeah.
Instagram, YouTube, or anywhere else that you'd like to point people to.
Yeah. So I have Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. All of my content is primarily my movement content. That's all I really post. And so if you want to just have, some daily entertainment and yeah, that's where you can find me. So and they're all just my name. That's nothing crazy. All the handles are the same across the platform. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. And one more time, what was how do we find your music?
If you just type in RE colon made on Spotify and Apple Music, you'll find us.
That's awesome.
That's me and Josiah. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, everybody, thank you so much for taking the time to check out this episode. If it blessed you, challenged you, encouraged you, if you consider subscribing, sharing, or leaving a review, I'd really, really appreciate that. And again, Garrett, thanks for your time, man. I really enjoyed catching up with you and meeting you
Yeah,
officially.
man.
And
Same.
yeah, it's been super cool.
Nana, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody.